Grab your big book, your pen, your highlighter, and notepad and get ready to hear and apply some of the solution from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous through the experience, strength, and hope of Nikki M. To have a question addressed in a future episode of Noodle It Out with Nikki, please send an email to noodlewithnikki@gmail.com, and Nikki is spelled with 2 Ks. To get a more interactive experience with Nikki as she noodles out life and recovery questions using the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, you can get a link to her weekly Noodle It Out with Nikki meeting held live on Zoom every Monday morning at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. The information to that meeting is in the show notes of this podcast. God morning, God afternoon, and God evening to all. My name is Justin B. I am a son of an all-powerful and all-loving God and a qualifying addict of multiple fellowships trying to live in the miracle of recovery, and I'm here with the intelligent agent, spearhead of God's ever-advancing creation, and my co-host, Nikki M. Nikki, please take a second and say hi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nikki M, and I'm a grateful member. That's what our book says. When speaking in public, we're to identify as members of whatever program you're in. And so today, that's my identification, is not only am I a member and grateful to be here at this table, I'm just a loving child of God, ready to perform this work well.
Thank you, Nikki. And I'm grateful to be back. I'm coming off about a week of connection with God, nature, and others, and been completely off the grid. And I'm grateful for others who have stepped in and helped me be able to do that, both in the RICO 12 family of recovery resources. If you're not aware, we have the RICO 12 speaker meeting, which is our flagship. We have this recording, Noodle It Out with Nikki, as well as the Big Book roundtable that we do with David G. The last few weeks, we've had a fellow step in. Silvio D stepped in and hosted RICO 12 for me so that I could spend some time off the grid with family, with others, and it has been very helpful. And now it's time to jump back in. We'll see how rusty we are as we do this, but very grateful to do this. Nikki and I, as we do this Noodle It Out with Nikki, what we do is we bring a question from people we work with, from our own experience, strength, and hope. We bring a question from the Noodle It Out with Nikki WhatsApp group. If you would like to join that, the details are in the show notes there. And then we take it, I ask Nikki, she noodles through the Big Book and shares with us the solution as found in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. All right, so let's jump right into today's question that we've noodled out here. So the question is basically, I'm in a 12-step fellowship, whether it be SLA, whether it be OA, whether it be GA, whatever that is. And this fellowship has its own materials that they use as approved literature in their groups. Most of them also have the Big Book as approved literature, but often they rely on their own materials. Nikki, let's talk about those materials versus the Big Book. What do you think, and what does the book say about that?
Well, the book says a lot about this, about, different materials. Let's just start here because this is a big question. Can you repeat it one more time? Because I think your week on vacation is like influencing my brain right here. One more time, the question, so I can write it down.
Yeah, I'll boil it down. So the approved literature of any fellowship, and I'll just say it like this. We've got SLA materials versus the Big Book. How do they stack up with each other? How do they help each other? And how do they maybe hurt in someone's recovery as they go through that, trying to balance different materials as they work recovery?
Okay, I can kind of wrap my head a little bit more. Sometimes you got to hear it twice, everybody. And don't be afraid, to say, because that's what happens. Our minds fall asleep. Okay, that's what's happening to me even in this moment. Page 23, why? This disease centers in my mind. Now, we're talking about there's all kinds of different fellowships. If you are just going like you just found our podcast, or you're new to the rooms, or you've been here a long time, if you've been here a long time, there is over 300 different fellowships of anonymouses. There's, you can name it. There's Marijuana Anonymous. There's Food Anonymous, as Justin just mentioned, Sex and Love Anonymous. There's Media Anonymous. There's compulsive spending anonymous. You name it. but there's an original anonymous, and it's called the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And Justin and I here at this at our Noodle with Nikki podcast, we use the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we use the 4th edition. Now, why do I say yes? There's other materials, but Justin, let me go deeper. I entered the rooms through Al-Anon 12 years ago, and I was going to save my alcoholics from death and destruction, okay? So I go in and they have a bunch of literature in Al-Anon. Now, the Big Book is not even literature approved in Al-Anon, which is still to this day a back tingling resentment, because it doesn't make sense. Like in the book, I mean, we'll go into it. I'm going to do a little dance here with what the book says about it, but there's all these rooms that don't have it. So I'm in the rooms of Al-Anon and I'm in their literature, but I'm dying. And then I get an Al-Anon sponsor. I just want to tell you guys a little bit of my experience, strength, and hope first, why I'm so adamant on the Big Book. Because this is 12 years ago, so I'm in there. I'm getting some relief. Just I'm coming to meetings. I'm getting people who understand. We're all listening to each other's problems. We are in literature that's, I want to say, easier, softer way, a little more gentler, a little less, you're going to die if you drink or think, and more like, how can we, help each other, a softer language. Then I go into the rooms of SLAA because I finally, after 2 years, find a sponsor in Al-Anon. And then he says to me, Nikki, you really, you need Sex and Love Anonymous. I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? That's for those people. Then I go in there and I do get armed with some information, the characteristics of what does it mean to be a sex and love addict. What are these characters? And they come with their own book, the SLAA book. Now I'm in year 3 or 4 and I'm ready to kill myself and kill my lover. Why, Justin? I'm in a version of a recovery program that doesn't get to the bare bone basics, which is the centers in your mind and you will die. So that's kind of why I'm so adamant on these material things. Because if you are getting recovery through other materials, through NA, Narcotics Anonymous has their own book, but I've also been to an NA convention in Palm Springs, California. And my experience was it was sober people having an orgy. It was real fun. This was in the 90s. Okay. Everyone's sober, but they're all sex addicts untreated. Now, what does the Big Book say? Page 42, let's go there. And these literatures are great and people are getting recovered. But I don't know if I didn't, and I rarely find people in these rooms and other literature experiencing the miracles, because the book describes miracles in this program. And I'm not seeing that with my own eyes. I'm seeing it when people work the undiluted Big Book. So page 42 says this. See, it says quite as important. See, this is very important, was the discovery. Remember, we're here to discover something because our life is not working. We need to discover that spiritual principles would solve all my problems. Now, people in the Big Book, old timers in AA, why are you sending? This is a question I want you to write into Noodle, and maybe we can have a guest spot one time here and noodle this out seriously. Why are you sending other people to other rooms or fellows to other rooms when they come in and they are alcoholics or they're suffering in the disease of alcoholism, and you're telling them to go to Al-Anon, to go to FA, to go to MA, to go to Narcotics Anonymous? We don't discuss that here. When the Big Book says quite as important was the discovery that spiritual principles would solve all my problems. See, that's what the book says. Please turn to Tradition 3 long form, page 563. Let me get there as my fingers and my brain is slow this morning. And 563, my book's falling apart too. There's just all these wonderful obstacles that make me really have to reach for God. It says number 3, our membership. Remember, I introduced myself this morning as a member, and it says ought to include all. See, all. There's that word all, who suffer from alcoholism. Why? People who are sending fellows to another room. Why are you? Oh, because Nikki, the 12th tradition on page 562 says the only requirement for AA membership is the desire to stop drinking. That's not what the book long form, the original You see how it's already watered down, Justin? I mean, let's just stop here and park it here for a moment. Let's park it. We are looking at what we're talking about live in action. Here's the long form. So a group of people sat down and wrote what our AA experience has taught us. Look at the top of that page 563. It's in italics. It says our AA experience has taught us that. And then it continues to list 1, 2, 3, 4. Now roll your eyes over to page 562 and it's all shortened down. I mean, this is why people are dying. If you ask me, now this is my experience, that's why I was dying, because somehow this original version got watered down to when Nikki M walked in the room. Because I would have happily walked into any room, but I didn't know that I was sent to this room where I was dying in the diluted message. See, like, this is like, what does the book say? So now, if I'm recovered to go into those rooms now is a completely different story. I've seen people and I saw people in Al-Anon who had what I wanted, but they are what they call double winners. They are people who came from AA, went to Al-Anon, and have a big book background. So they're actually subconsciously or maybe consciously carrying that undiluted big book message, and you will see it in FA or OA. I have seen it, and you've probably seen it in all the other Sex Anonymous, SA Anonymous, any of these other anonymouses. The people who really want what I have in those rooms literally come from an AA big book background. So they have that basis. Now, somewhere along the way, they've lost what the book says because they have forgotten that page 118 says this. It says, alcoholism is an illness over which we could not possibly have had any power. So if alcoholism is an illness that we have no power, why? Again, and I get very adamant on this, why are you sending people to other rooms? Because as you know, I'm in Cocaine Anonymous and I started a home group. That's where my sponsors are from. And it's an open meeting for anyone and everyone coming. And I don't want to be in that room, Justin. That's really not my thing. And I snort thoughts. I snort men. And yes, I've tried, unlike you, I've tried everything. You haven't even tried alcohol. I've even tried crystal meth. I mean, and I could have easily untreated been shipped out into a type 3 living under the gutter crystal meth head, but God intervened and gave me another addiction called men and money. So I just like, why do our page 22, our behavior patterns vary? But anyway, I'm in the rooms of Cocaine Anonymous and I've been told many times, Nikki, you do not belong here. But I'll tell you something. I don't say me, but the method that I used to sponsor, the approach that I've been shown out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, when I walk into a room, not only do I have a shit ton of sponsees, I have so many grand sponsees. And as I was reminded today on Noodle, the live meeting, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Monday mornings, I was reminded by a sponsee today and by her sponsee, who's my grand sponsee, that he's sponsoring. So I have grand sponsees. And this is in the room of Cocaine Anonymous because this guy was dying sober, not only on crystal meth, but on women. And if I don't walk into the rooms and bring that, so should he go to SLAA? Then does he need to go to OA? Then does he, you see where this goes? Then I need to go to Social Media Anonymous when there's one book, one message. So really, I'd like to rewind back to 1939. And let's go here. Justin, do you have any thoughts real quick? Because I want to go to this page after you have a thought.
Yeah, I do. You know, you mentioned going to a conference, and I think you said it was NA, but it doesn't matter, any conference, and seeing sober people having an orgy, whatever that may be, you know, sober people who are still not recovered. And I think a lot of people can say, I got sober in whatever fellowship. And I can say this, I got sober in the addiction recovery program, in SA. I got sober in these fellowships, but I didn't find recovery until I learned about the big book and started diving into the solution of the big book. And that's where I found recovery. And there's a big difference between sobriety and recovery in my experience. So that's kind of what I wanted to add in there. Any other thoughts on that before you go to the next page?
Well, you know, everybody listening, and we repeat ourselves a lot here. Why? Because we fall asleep. But Justin and I are on a round table that comes out every Thursday, line by line through the big book. And we see this with our friend, Get David G. Listen to his podcast, reach out to him. He takes time one-on-one with people. And he was sober. And his story is amazing because 19 years sober, dying in the other addictions. And so I love that. That's what we're talking about. And if someone from the beginning in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous would really have opened his eyes to that. I mean, I don't know his process, but same with me. Like, this is it. I can get sober. I can stop, as our friend says, we can just stop whatever your addiction is. Justin can stop his acting out behaviors. I can too. You can stop whatever you're doing. But are you happy, joyous, and free? Are you in sobriety? What's sobriety? And I'll read it before we go to the page I want to take us to, which is page 52, sobriety, the spiritual malady. You know, you've just stopped whatever you're doing, but you're still having trouble with all your relationships. It says personal, every single relationships, including the one with yourself and God. You can't control your emotional natures. Like my line out, I'm a super freak, and it's not the cool kind. Okay. I'm prey to misery and depression, line out, self-obsession. I want to die. No pill, no doctor can help me. I can't make a living. I can make a lot of money. I can't make a living. I'm a feeling of uselessness. See, that's sober. That's just stopping your behaviors. But to wake up in the morning and the first words and thoughts that fall from your lips and your mind is thank you, God. Use me, God. See, that's where we've recovered from a seemingly, that's fake news, hopeless state of mind and body. And that's in the front of the book. But I want to get to page 159 because we started this out with, you know, different reading materials and different fellowships. And Nikki, we don't do that here. And that's for another fellowship. That's for another room. And I'm here to mic drop it and just call it right now. Bullshit. Is everyone reading a vision for you? That's where I'm turning. And I've done this so many times on these episodes. I'd have to go back and listen to them, but it must be once a month. I'm talking about this page because the rooms are dead and dying. Because again, go read this now. I do want to do this caveat. The other materials are helpful once my mind is awake and I can absorb that information with a big book, God-centered mind. Then that material makes sense. But until my mind is awake, because remember, I am dead asleep. I'm having a spiritual experience or a spiritual awakening every day because I'm in the grip of a progressive illness. I fall asleep. I only get a daily reprieve. So I need to know what the vision. See, this is the vision. And if everybody knows we've drifted far out from the vision, and I'm looking at Justin, and I'm going to look after I read this, because it's a basic yes or no, and you can say it. The very bottom, page 159 says here, it became, see, this is the vision for you, Nikki, the vision for you, Justin, the vision for all of the rooms. It's going to become customary. Why aren't we here? We should be here by now, everybody. It's customary. This is our custom to set apart one night, one morning. Like I have a one night a week home group in person. That's tonight, Monday night. I have an online meeting one morning a week. That's Noodle with Nikki. I go to other meetings, like my sponsee speaking, but I set apart one night a week that I do not miss. I've never missed a Noodle meeting. And unless I'm out of the country, I will not miss my in-person home group meeting that we just started. For a meeting, there's your meeting. See, there's the word meeting in the book. So it's a custom to set apart one night a week for a meeting to be attended. And here it is. I want a big drum roll. Everybody, page 160. It's to be attended. This is the vision for us. Anyone. So it's to be attended by anyone. Why do we have 300 fellowships? Or everyone. And I get serious about this because my friends are dying on people. I just had to turn a woman away, Justin. Beautiful, blonde hair, curly haired, gorgeous woman, my age, over 50, 14 years sober. I had to let her go. She can't stop with one man. She can't. Her life is literally, she almost lost her. She has a great job. I think I talked about her recently on a podcast. Yeah, I can't work with her because I don't know what's happened. For 14 years in the rooms, she has not read this line. She hasn't read page 14, simple but not easy. We turn all, there's the word all. We turn all things over. I don't send sponsees. Now, will I send sponsees literature, especially like they'll go, I'm not a sex and love addict. Well, when you read the characteristic of number 12, that you assign magical, mystical qualities to people and then blame them for ruining your life, everybody goes, oh, that's me too. Or you take people hostage even without knowing them, or, like all these little things that, because our addict life is our only normal one. So when I see this in black and white in a sex and love meeting, or I see this in a food meeting, or I see this in a Debtors Anonymous meeting, if I have money issues, or a gambler's meeting, I can use these tools, this spiritual toolkit, which includes this other literature. But before that, I must use the big tool, which is my big book. It's the biggest tool I have. See, in order to break a wall, you first need the hammer. I need the hammer. That's the big book. And then I can use my other little chisels. Everybody, get this vision in your mind. You can use those. My Al-Anon literature is fire to deal with my alcoholic family or my alcoholism. There's a line in God, I wish I had my book. I want to read it. It's in the One Day at a Time, one of these daily readers. And it's in Courage to Change, everyone. Al-Anon literature. You're never going to hear me speak Al-Anon, but I am today. There's always something. It's called Courage to Change. It's a daily reader in Al-Anon. And I think it's January 12th. And it literally says, and this is the metaphor, my Al-Anon sponsor, I love him. He came from an AA background, 30 years sober. But it's about the bees. And it says, don't put your nose in the beehive and it won't get stung. Meaning, don't put your nose, like you have a grown daughter and a son-in-law and children, don't put your nose in their beehive, Justin. You're going to get stung. So that, those things help me. Or the minute I'm assigning a magical, mystical quality, even to my prime minister. Because see, everyone thinks, oh, this is about sex. No, this is the fantasy that my prime minister actually cares about me. Yeah, I'm sure he does in his own way. But you know what I mean, Justin? So I see these, because I practice these principles in all my affairs. So we're to set apart one night a week for anyone and everyone interested, here it is, in a spiritual way of, I want to close my book. What does it say? Spiritual way of living, of life. That's what this is about. So I hope I'm answering these questions as you're listening. The reality of it is, take extensive notes, check this with your big book, and go back to your home group business meeting. And if they won't make the changes, to say that when someone's in there and they're dying and they're talking about dying on sex addiction, and I mean love addiction, they can't live without their partner who's leaving them. Don't refer them to Al-Anon yet. Make sure they know what the book says and then refer them. Because if you're not pointing out, what does the book say first, then they're going to a watered down message. How about this one, Justin? God is everything. And then go down telephone 2,000 years later. And what are we hearing? I mean, literally, you're think about that. 2,000 years ago, this radical Jew named Jesus said, love God first and foremost and love your neighbor as yourself. Now, if I go 2,000 years to today, there are so many rules and regulations. There are so many distorted versions of those two literal laws. Where do we go?
This is good stuff. And I go to what you shared there. I've got one comment here, or one relating something here that may be helpful. If I want to learn about, Christianity, I need to dive into the Bible and the Gospels and not just read about all the commentary on those things. I need to go to the core. If I want to learn about Islam, I need to go to the Quran and not other people's commentary on it. If I want to experience recovery, I need to go to the big book, because that is the original text in the Anonymous. And then I can go and look at the other things after I have that firm foundation with the big book. I love this. Thank you, Nikki, for walking us through this. This has been very helpful for me, and I hope for many others who are trudging this road of happy destiny. Keep coming back. Work it. You are worth it.